I recently spent over $5,000 to find out Apex Legends is pay to win, and not in the way that you'd first think. Yes, you may be able to spend $20 to get a better skin with better iron sights that may help you get a tiny advantage over the enemies, but the true pay to win elements allow you to spend upwards of $5,000 to get an advantage that other players just can't get a hold of. What I'm talking about is higher frame rate. If you spend more money for a better PC, you get higher frames. But in Apex, it's not just about getting a more fluid experience. The game actually changes. The mechanics work differently with different frame rates. The highest level movement becomes easier on higher frames. However, there's certain caps and limits. So when we talk about tap strafing, air control, bunny hopping, wall jumping, super glides, every single movement mechanic in the game, they work differently on different frame rates. Perhaps a movement guide will explain it better. So basically, depending on your frames will determine how different movement mechanics in the game work. A 300 FPS machine will allow you to pull off crazy tap strafes super easily and super reliably, but at the same time, super glides are going to become very difficult. The question I want to answer today is, what is the perfect FPS between 60 and 300 FPS to have the best possible movement in the game? I'm going to start at 60 FPS and make my way all of the way up to 300, and we'll learn along the way which movement mechanics work better on different frame rates and what is the optimal frame rate to have in this game. If you're someone like me who is able to choose anywhere between 60 and 300 FPS and have that FPS reliably, what is the best choice? It's quite interesting. You'd think maybe 300 FPS is the best, but it turns out it's not quite the case. Let's get started. So, we're starting things off with 60 FPS. The game does not feel great. For a high-paced action FPS like Apex Legends, 60 FPS is not great. You're going to want upwards of 100 FPS to have a fluid experience. It's going to be hard to track enemies as they're moving across the screen. However, some movement mechanics are actually going to be easier at 60 FPS. I believe that at 60 FPS, things like super glides and any movement based on mantling should be a lot easier. Now the question is having super glides available going to make it easier for us, or is it too low of a frame rate that the benefit from super gliding is not going to help? Now, we're going to jump straight into things. The window for us to get a super glide is going to be 5 times higher than if we were to get on... if we had 300 FPS, it would be 5 times harder to get a super glide off, right? Now, bunny hopping is also another weird mechanic. With lower FPS, it's actually easier. The timing windows you have are great. So if for some reason you want a super glide or you want a Raz strafe, it's going to be easier on lower FPS, as you can see here. You're not going to be able to tap strafe as easily, though. The amount of W inputs you can get, and it's really hard with my mouse, because my mouse is really clicky. Yeah, tap strafing on 60 FPS is really hard. How about wall jumping? I believe wall jumping should be fairly straightforward on all FPSs. Yeah, it's pretty easy. It's just that you lose a lot of lurchiness here. It's really hard to get a good tap strafe off. It's possible, but you're going to need a super... Your mouse wheel is going to need to scroll real fast, right? So now that we've done a movement test, it's time for us to jump in and just play the game. We're going to do a couple hot drops, see how it feels. You know, is this an experience worth playing? Personally, the shooting experience is just too rough for my liking. I'd rather have more lurchiness. This is not enough lurchiness. Bee hopping and super glide's fun and all that, but if I can't lurch after a super glide, what's the point, you know? And even my super glide timing's terrible. I just can't believe we can't super jump. It's so hard to get the timings right. It's really hard. As expected, the experience up close is really rough. We got a tap strafe off there. But it felt rough. That's all I can say. It felt rough. There's a lot of delay when you jump. You have a lot more control over how long it takes to change direction mid-air, which is interesting. Oh. I feel like I just don't have a chance to fight people up close, though. It's interesting how the game just... The physics of the game just work differently. It's absolutely crazy. They're here. That was... yeah. That was a slideshow there. I don't know how we hit some good Mastiff shots, but that was an absolute slideshow. That is a perfect example of why 60 FPS is not enough. When you get up in people's faces, close quarters, you just can't track people. So, in summary, 60 FPS is surprisingly good for recoil control. Bunny hopping is really easy. You have good strafing. Tap strafing and lurching is really hard, but super gliding is really easy. Okay, here we go. 90 FPS now. We're going to try all of the movement mechanics, see how they feel on 90 FPS first to get sort of a baseline, and then we're going to jump in and just play and get my general impressions. Once again, like 60 FPS. So let's first start with super glides. It should be a little bit harder, but I don't think there'll be that much difference. I chose Rampart because my timings of Rampart Walls is pretty good for super glides, and as you can see, it's pretty easy, right? We're hitting them almost every single time here. I feel like it would have been a fairer test doing this with Octane, with Rampart instead of Octane, the first test, but I really wanted to test the B-hoppings. So you can see, timing's pretty good. It's pretty easy. I'm missing a few there, though. It's a new keyboard, so please... That's one of the issues. Right, now tap strafing. Let's see tap strafing. So we know we're tap strafing when we can divert our momentum. So if we slide off this, right, and then turn back, that's basically a tap strafe there. It's not great. The thing is, I have a really clicky mouse wheel, so I really need higher FPS to tap strafe effectively. That's what I've noticed myself. This is not a great... Like I say, if you have like a free scrolling mouse wheel, it's not clicky, I think you're going to be fine on 90 FPS. I think with some practice, you'll actually be okay. It's not great, but it's not bad, you know? You can see here, right? It's okay. Like, we can get a nice 180. Not bad, considering we're on 90 FPS here, which is half of what, like, my... I've been playing 180 for a long time. It's not bad. It's not bad, okay? So with that out of the mind, let's try bunny hop, shall we? Once again, as expected, bunny hops is super easy. It's only 90 FPS. That's only 50% over 60. Super easy as expected. So we've got this nice sort of bouncy feeling to normal standard strafing. So actually, 90 FPS for movement feels pretty good. We have a really good consistency for super glides. Tap strafing isn't too bad. Like, it's not bad. Bunny hopping's easy. I assume wall jumping, like always, is pretty straightforward. Like, we're not going to have any problem with that. I don't think you'll ever have problem with wall jumping. 90 FPS is surprisingly good. Let's try some zipline tech. That's the only thing I want to try next. It's still not... I can't... I gotta say, it doesn't feel... Yeah, it feels a little odd. For ziplines, I think 90 is a little too low. I don't know what it is, but I just can't time it right. It's really hard to get, like, a proper jump. You know? It's really hard. It's actually really difficult. Now, once again, this might be because my scroll wheel is so clicky here. If you're really good at zipline jumping already, it might not be a problem, but it feels... The timings here feel really clunky. So 90 FPS is really optimal, surprisingly, for all movement mechanics. Tap strafing is not perfect. Zipline jumping is pretty terrible. Honestly, pretty terrible. Okay, now it's time to try 90 FPS in the flesh. Gonna just hot drop and see how it feels. My first impressions are that it's gonna be pretty good for movement, Tap strafing perhaps not so much, but the main problem once again will be once we're in people's faces, people are moving all over the place, it might feel like a bit of a slideshow. So we're really gonna just have to test things here. This purple armor, nice. A wingman. Wingman on low FPS might be a good shout. I think full auto weapons are gonna suffer a little bit. But let's once again see if the recoil control is good. I'm going to assume it is. Got people over there. Right there, dude. Like, it just is so easy. I don't understand how that's a thing. I don't know if it's just placebo or what. I can't even see what I'm shooting at. Well, let's go get closer. This is where it matters. I mean, it's no surprise if the recoil is good at long range. It's not really going to matter much, really. Where's the players? We downed somebody over here. Ooh. Okay. Alright. What we really need is some movement. I'm not seeing enough movement. And stuff too. So far, honestly, I don't really have any complaints. Like, that wasn't too bad. That was pretty fluid. It felt pretty good. I could hit my shots. You know, we saw the Wraith super glided there, but I could track it. All right, it didn't feel too bad. Up close, maybe it wouldn't be perfect, but I'm probably pleasantly surprised it wasn't too bad. Okay, here we go, 120 FPS. This is what consoles are going to be capable of once they actually get proper next gen out there. So let's go test super glides, tap strafes, recoil control, bunny hops, large strafes, air strafes, wall jump, and zipline tech. Right, let's start with the super glides. So already you're noticing that I'm struggling to hit these, man. Like, this is a new keyboard. You could consider me a inexperienced super glide user when I have this keyboard, right? Usually 180 FPS, my super glides are super consistent, but right now it's looking pretty rough. Just a minute ago on 90 FPS, we're hitting them really well. You know, that just 30 FPS jump, to be honest, is kind of almost halved our super glide consistency. Although with a bit more practice, we can get it under the, you know, we can get it. But I think this is a good example of, say, if you're not super good with timings, you may start to, in my opinion, hit a wall. When you get to like over 100 FPS, 120, you may find it harder to super glide. You're going to need to be very careful with timings, it seems. So that's pretty interesting. Tap strafes. Let's see tap strafes then. It feels somewhat more fluid than normal. Let's say that. Yeah, it feels, to be honest, it feels quite a lot different. It feels a lot more fluid. I'm seeing a lot more lurchiness. It seems a lot more easy to input more W inputs right now. So I think 120 FPS is, in my opinion, it seems to be where tap strafing really starts to feel real lurchy, right? Like, we can feel it here. And I bet if we were to play Horizon, we'd feel it a lot more. That's quite nice to see. I think if you're an Octane player and you love tap strafing, this is going to be the kind of, like, you know, the FPS you want to be running. There's definitely a lot of lurchiness with doing some lurch strafes here. You can feel it, man. You can feel it so much more, for sure. Alright, let's try bunny hopping then. I wonder if now bunny hopping is going to feel... it's mostly the same, to be honest. 120 FPS, bunny hopping still feels super smooth. Okay, cool. Let's see what zip lines are like then. Ooh, okay, they're feeling a lot better. I feel like we've reached something here where like, it feels a lot easier to do this sort of movement tricks, right? Like, I think 120 may be the sweet spot. Like, it feels so much better. I'm not a very good zipline player. I'm really bad. So it would be nice to see this tested more, but it feels a lot better, to be honest. Right? Yeah, it feels a lot bouncier. It does. Oh, that's weird. Okay. Zipline tech feels good. Tap strafing's really nice and lurchy. Let's go and get some weapons and test recoil control. I just had to peek. It's almost like a reverse of what I had before. So what I'm noticing now is there's a lot more sort of I can feel every shot, you know? At 120 FPS compared to 60, it's only double FPS, but I can feel every bullet. The recoil is there, but you know, that gives us a bit more sort of timings, I guess, to control the recoil, or at least readjust. Perhaps not as easy recoil control, but I mean, it's not bad, bro. It's not bad. Oh, she died. Cool. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we've managed to get the hot drop and the test in one here. It feels pretty good. Like, I'm quite impressed. I'm honestly quite impressed with how it feels. Okay. Yeah, it's a lot better. It's a lot better. I don't think we need a hot drop because we found it there. The game feels to me more like Apex should feel. Everything feels more fluid. Tap strafing is there. Like, it feels really lurchy, which is something we were missing on lower FPS. That's cool. That's cool. What we're going to do now is go to the FPS that I think most people play at, which is 180, 190. There was this problem with the game where before 180, if you go over 190, your game would lag, right? It would be very stuttery. They've actually fixed that now. You don't have that problem anymore. But a lot of OG players still cap their frame rate to 180. So this is what I would consider the most common high frame rate, 180 FPS. So we're going to get into the game. This is what I used to run. We're going to see how super glides feel, how tap strafes feel, how recoil control feels, bunny hops, lurch strafes, air strafes, wall jumps, zipline tech. Let's just jump in and see. Right, here we go. The game feels really smooth now. This is a frame rate that I love to play at as well. Feels really great. Super glides are going to be harder now, but this is the timing that I've been used to. I wonder, even with this keyboard, if I'm going to be able to hit them easier. No. Seems to be... no. So... yeah, for me, super glides are... this is where on my old keyboard I was feeling really consistent with it. You can see it's alright. It is alright. I don't think the timing is massively different between 120 and 180 actually. Like, personally, it's feeling pretty similar. But yeah, it's still... you're going to need a lot of practice to get your timing right on this FPS. And as we go higher, the timing window for a successful super glide will go down and down and down, right? Right, let's see tap strafing now. We don't really have much room to move about, but... oh, it feels quite good. Yeah, I mean...
close ring in 60 seconds. I love the tension.
It feels so much more, like, lurchy instantly. It's just because you can, like, input more W's, right? The way I understand it, right? So it just feels that much better. And once again, this is going to be a big thing for Pathfinders, Octanes, Horizons. I think these legends have the best tap strafing. But any legend can implement tap strafing into their kit. And it's a really important thing. Lurching, air lurching is really important, right? Yeah, you see that lurch there on the backward strafe? Feels really good.
Could have something. 10 more seconds. Rings close.
Well, okay. I just quickly want to test the zipline, see how ziplines feel, but I have a feeling it's not going to be massively different from 120. Honestly. Oh, wow. It kind of is, though. It's weird. It's weird. It feels like yeah, I have to say, I think it makes sense that a lot of people are playing on 180 FPS. Like, it just feels good, man. It's probably no surprise that people just have messed around with the settings and they've naturally found 180 FPS to be the smoothest. It is really smooth, man. I think that I don't know if this is just placebo, but it almost feels like the zipline interactions are just that much more fluid. It doesn't feel clunky. It feels like I can touch a zipline and just be off it within like a second, which is pretty cool, right? Yeah. So that's nice. Right? Like, that is pretty good to me. So let's go fight in this POI. I'm pretty sure 180 FPS is going to be feeling pretty good. Let's see what bunny hopping is feeling like. Still pretty smooth. We've lost that strafe nut. Like, that bounciness we were getting on 60 FPS and 90 FPS when we were b-hopping is basically gone, right? Which means we're now going to have to start to implement tap strafing to get that same level of air strafing, which is a really weird concept. But for some reason, at least how it feels, like I said again, this could just be placebo. It almost feels as if once you get higher frame rates, the sort of potential for like air strafing and how much you can move through the air is reduced, and I don't know why. The game feels super fluid though. You can move around. It feels great. Everything is on an upward trend besides b-hopping and general air strafing. Super glides are not so bad. We are now at 240 FPS. Now, here's the thing. This is where a lot of people don't get to experience Apex. Very few people are going to be playing capped 240 FPS and have it fluidly stuck. We're going into unknown territory now. My assumption is super glides are going to become very difficult. But lurchiness is going to be there, but it's not like we're going to get more lurchiness. We're just going to be able to input more tap strafes, which means it's going to be more success, like tap strafing, which is just going to be second nature. Super easy. Oh, wow. We actually, our first attempt at a super glide. Was that just luck? It was, yes. Yeah. Big jump. I mean, yeah. Just keep trying it. It's okay. It's not a massive step up from 180. Someone's throwing arc stars at me, dude. What is going on? Yeah. It's not actually that bad. I don't think it's much of a difference. I don't know how. I don't think it's much of a difference. Right, let's try tap strafing. I've already seen it's pretty good. I think that basically if you just input any W key movement, you're going to have a lot of lurch. It's just going to be there built in, dude. Because it's just, you have so many more W inputs you can fit in. A stim right now would be nuts, right? If we get that momentum from the stim and we can just lurch strafe, it's going to be pretty crazy, for sure. If you really, really like tap strafing and you want the most absolute best tap strafing potential, 240 may be for you, but you're going to have to really practice your super glide timings. Like, really. Otherwise, like, you're just not going to have any luck with it. I assume ziplines are going to feel pretty good. These are a bit weird for a zipline. I know where we can go. Once again, there's that yeah, it feels like almost as if the higher the FPS, the bouncier the zipline, which is really interesting. Let's try it just normal B-hopping. This is quite interesting. I mean, it doesn't, like, once again, let's slow down our momentum and try and do some just normal lurch strafes. The bounciness is not there. We're just basically staying still. But actual B-hopping, it's not hard. It's still pretty straightforward, to be honest. No problem. Not that that's really a mechanic that has much use. And obviously, wall jumping, still super easy. I think the thing that I'm noticing from going from 180 to 240 is just how much lurchier the tap strafing is, because it's almost as if you don't need to be perfect with the timings. You have, because I'm not amazing at tap strafing, you just have a lot of more freedom to just sort of not get the best timings for tap strafing. It's almost as if the higher FPS you get, the easier it is to have good lurch, but the harder it is for super glide. So you almost want to find the balance, right? If you have a PC that's capable enough, just keep upping the FPS until you found the balance where you can get good tap strafes and good super glides. I have a feeling 180 is a sweet spot. I think that once we get to like 300, which we will in a minute, we're going to have a lot of problems getting any super glides. Right, let's test out zip lines then. This is a very interesting zip line. It feels a lot better, to be honest. Like, I don't know how, but the interaction with it just feels that much. I don't know, man. Like, once again, the timings you have for, like, good zipline movement, you have longer windows of timing to get things right, you know? Now, this is a normal zipline jump, right? This is what, a super jump? I just realized there's, like, a bunch of backpacks in there. Feels pretty great, to be honest, and we can even jump and then, you know, like, yeah, it feels good, man. It feels good. I would say it's somewhat of an upgrade to 180 FPS. The only, like, thing that I'm saying, downgrade wise, once you go from 180 to 240, is the super glide timings, just a little bit. Everything else is pretty good. I don't think we need to see the combat, to be honest, with this high frame rate, because, I mean, it's just going to be as smooth as you could think. Recoil control, it's just all going to be as best as you can get in terms of gameplay. You're going to be able to track people easier, but now we're going to go to 300 FPS, and this is where things get interesting. I think very few players out there put 300 FPS, cap it, and actually maintain that high FPS. The only trouble with going with this sort of playstyle, right, we're choosing a specific frame rate and we're capping it and making sure we don't go below it. It does lock out a lot of movement that can be dependent on when your frame rate fluctuates. For example, there is a quick slide that is possible when you switch weapons because it fluctuates your FPS. But if you have a PC that's just too good, you're not going to be able to do that. Now, my assumptions going into this is tap strafes may feel a tiny bit better, but the percentage increase from 240 to 300 is getting pretty minimal at this point. I have a feeling it's going to mostly feel the same. But from my testing earlier, one thing that starts to get a bit weird at 300 FPS is bunny hopping seems to be very difficult, and I have no idea why. So we're going to go test that now. Let's try bee hopping first. This is where things start to get a bit weird. Feels fine now. So bee hopping is still possible. Air strafing is pretty much non-existent, as you can see. Tap strafing.
Half the squads are out.
Weirdly enough, I don't know if it feels as good as 240. I don't know. And super gliding is going to be pretty hard. I mean, we hit one. Let's keep trying. It's hard, man. timing window is a lot shorter for sure. We're doing it okay, but I mean, you can see our success rate's not great. So, yeah, I mean, super gliding's hard. Tap strafing mostly feels the same. I mean, it's basically the same. Bunny hopping is the same. Air strafing just feels the same. I feel like maybe the only benefit, now this might take some practice, but it may simply be like lurchiness with strafing. But I'm not very good at it. It almost feels the game is not... I feel stuck in the air, almost. I feel stuck in the air, like... I don't know how to explain it, but it almost feels like my movement through the air does not feel as good as it does on 240. And I don't know if that's just... because I'm not used to the frame rate, or what? The Broken Moon ziplines is always so weird, aren't they? I don't... weirdly enough... I don't like it. So, in summary, I would honestly say that the sweet spot is around 180 to 240 FPS. I think 180 is the best. There's no stuttering on higher frame rates, but I do think that once you hit that 300 FPS cap, things start to feel, in my opinion, just a little weird. I don't know why. 240 FPS felt pretty good. If we go back from the beginning, 60 FPS, for some reason, air strafing is really great. 90 FPS isn't too bad, but there's not much lurchiness. Once you get to 120, things start to feel a bit lurchier. Tap strafing's a lot easier. Super gliding's still pretty easy. Once you go to 180 FPS, super gliding timings do get a little bit more difficult, but you do have a really good lurchiness. It feels really great. It feels like tap strafing is at its peak, in my opinion. When you go to 240, the differences are hard to really tell, but I've noticed as we get higher and higher FPS, the zip lines start to feel a lot more sort of, for someone who's not great at zip lines, the timing's just easy to get right. It's very easy to get good jumps, good super jumps, whatever they're called. I don't even know the names of these different zipline jumps, but it's easier with higher FPS. So, yeah, in my opinion, paying more money to get a better computer is good. But I think once you reach that sort of 180 FPS range, you don't really need higher, and you'll be good to go, and you'll be competing amongst the best. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the comments. Cheerio!